Hello, welcome to Miss Bell's classroom. Today in class we'll be continuing our space series and we'll be talking about a planet. So, does anyone know what planet this is? Okay, so I'm going to give you a clue. The first clue is it's the fourth planet from the sun. No one knows? Okay. The second clue is it's known as the red planet. No one still? Alright. The final clue is if you're from this planet, you are considered a Martian. Yes, it is Mars. So Mars is the fourth planet from the sun, and you can see it when you look at the sky at night. So on a clear night, I want you to try to go outside and look for Mars in the night sky, and let me know if you are able to see it. And later today, I'll tell you what you might want to look for when you're looking for Mars at night. So, the way that you can tell a planet from the stars is that stars may twinkle, but planets do not. So, Mars is going to look like a flat disk in the sky when you go look for it at night. The length of a year on Mars is 687 Earth days. And the length of a day on Mars is 24 hours, 37 minutes, which is a very close day, which is very close to a day on Earth, so, because a day on Earth is 24 hours. Gravity on Mars is 0.375 that of Earth, which means if you weighed 150 pounds on Earth, you would only weigh 56 pounds on Mars. So raise your hand if you think Mars is a very hot planet. Okay, raise your hand if you think Mars is a cold planet. Okay, so the average temperature on Mars is negative 81 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's colder than polar vortex cold. It's very, very cold. So Mars is the second smallest planet in the solar system after Mercury. Mars has a reddish color, and that's why the nickname is the red planet. So you can see here, looks pretty red. So liquid water cannot exist on the surface of Mars due to the low atmospheric pressure. And similar to Earth, Mars has 2 permanent polar ice caps. And the 2 polar ice caps are made of water. So if we look here, we can kind of see those are the ice caps. So if we look here, we can see the southern ice cap. And if the ice in this cap were to melt, the entire planet would be under 36 feet of water. So that's a lot of ice down here. The rotational period and seasonal cycles of Mars are very similar to Earth, as its tilt produces the seasons. Does anyone remember what Earth's 4 seasons are? Yes? Winter. What comes after winter? Spring, summer, and fall. Good. So, the atmosphere of Mars is made mostly of carbon dioxide and some water vapor. And Mars is the site of Olympus Mons, which is the largest volcano and second highest known mountain in the solar system. So this is what it looks like. This is Olympus Mons. And Mars is also the site of Valles Marineris, one of the largest canyons in the solar system. It's almost like the Grand Canyon. So you can kind of see here what that looks like. It's like this area right here. So the smooth Borealis Basin in the northern hemisphere covers 40% of the planet, and it may be a giant impact feature, which means it may have been formed when a giant asteroid hit the planet. So this picture I'm going to show you is a comparison of how big the smooth Borealis Basin actually is compared to Earth. So if we look here, this is Earth and the moon, and this is how much space the Borealis Basin would take up on Earth. So it is huge. So Mars, how many moons does Mars have? Does anyone know? It's not one. It actually has 2 moons. It is Phobos and Deimos, which are small, irregular shaped, and they actually might be captured asteroids. And all a captured asteroid is when an asteroid traveling through space gets caught into a planet's orbit. So the moons Phobos and Deimos appear to have surface material similar to many asteroids in the outer asteroid belt, which leads most scientists to believe that Phobos and Deimos are captured asteroids. Both Phobos and Deimos were discovered in 1877 by American astronomer Asaph Hall. And Phobos means fear, like a phobia. So this is Phobos. So you can see it's irregular with the shape. It doesn't look like our moon. It's not a perfect sphere. And Phobos is the larger of the 2 heavily cratered Martian moons, and it's dominated by 3 very large craters. So the largest of Phobos craters, Stickney, was named after the wife of Asaph Hall, and Stickney crater is 10 kilometers in diameter, which is almost half of the average diameter of Phobos. And the crater is so large on Phobos that the moon probably came close to breaking up. And another interesting feature about Phobos is the duration of its orbit. So Phobos revolves around Mars at an outstanding rate. In fact, it revolves around Mars 3 times during one Martian day. The next moon is Deimos, and it means panic. So this is Deimos, and just at different angles here. And Deimos is the smaller of the 2 Martian moons, and it is less irregular in shape than Phobos is, but it's still irregular. And the largest crater on Deimos is approximately 2.3 kilometers in diameter. And it's 1/5 of the size of the largest crater on Phobos. So let's go ahead, let's talk about visiting Mars. Raise your hand if you want to go to Mars someday. So some of us do. Raise your hand if you're like, no way, I'm not doing that. Some of us do. So does anyone think that someone has ever visited Mars? Okay, so no humans have actually visited Mars, but we have sent many spacecrafts to Mars. And the time it takes a spacecraft to get to Mars from Earth can be between 150 and 300 days, which is not that long in comparison to how far Mars is. And the distance between Earth and Mars is constantly depending on their relative positions in orbits. So it changes how far we are from Mars and how close we are from Mars. So the closest that they have ever been was in 2003, when we were 34.8 million miles apart from Mars. And NASA used what is called a Hohmann transfer orbit, and this is a method of travel that sends a spacecraft from Earth to Mars with the least amount of fuel. And it works by putting the spacecraft into a slowly increasing orbit. It slowly gets further and further out to the point where the spacecraft's orbit intersects with the orbit of Mars. And by calculating exactly where Mars will be at any given point in the time, scientists can ensure that the spacecraft intersects with Mars's orbit at the point where Mars will be. And NASA's Mariner 4 spacecraft was the first to make the journey to Mars in 1964. It took 228 days to reach Mars, and it was able to take a number of photographs when it arrived. So this is the picture of the Mariner 4 that arrived. So the Mariner 4 spacecraft was not expected to survive much longer than 8 months to its Mars flyby encounter, but it actually lasted about 3 years in solar orbit and continuing long-term studies of the solar wind environment. So Mariner 6 was next in 1969, and it took slightly less time, only 156 days. After Mariner 6, Mariner 8 and 9 were the third and final pair of Mars missions in NASA's Mariner series of the 1960s and early 70s. And unfortunately, Mariner 8 failed during launch, but Mariner 9 was launched successfully and became the first artificial satellite of Mars. When it arrived, it went into orbit, where it functioned in Martian orbit for nearly a year. And upon arrival, Mariner 9 observed that a great dust storm was obscuring the whole globe of the planet. So could you imagine a dust storm so big on Earth it covered the entire planet? And that storm actually lasted for a month long. After the storm stopped, the Mariner also discovered ancient riverbeds which was the first example of ancient liquid water on the planet. Another interesting thing about Mariner 9 is that it mapped 100% of the planet's surface. So the spacecraft also provided the first close-up pictures of 2 Martian moons. So now let's go ahead and fast forward to the 90s. The Mars Pathfinder was launched in December 1996 and landed on Mars in 1997. It was the first ever robotic rover to the surface of the red planet. And here's a picture from the Mars Pathfinder. Pretty cool, right? So in January 2004, 2 robotic geologists named Spirit and Opportunity landed on opposite sides of the red planet. Each rover bounced onto the surface inside a landing craft protected by airbags. When they stopped rolling, the airbags were deflated and the landing craft opened. With far greater mobility than the Mars Pathfinder rover, these robotic explorers have trekked for miles across the Martian surface, conducting field geology and making atmospheric observations. So this is Spirit and Opportunity. So both rovers have found evidence of ancient Martian environments where sometimes it could have been wet and habitable conditions may have existed. So that means that life could have existed. Both rovers exceeded their planned 90-day mission lifetimes by many years. Spirit actually lasted 20 times longer than its original design until its final communication to Earth on March 2010. Opportunity continues to operate more than a decade after launch. In 2015, Opportunity broke the record for extraterrestrial travel by rolling greater than the distance of a 26-mile marathon. There have been 18 successful missions to Mars so far, and maybe someday in the future a mission may include humans. So SpaceX, a community run by Elon Musk, has plans to send humans to Mars in 2022. So raise your hand if you would want to be on that flight. So some of us want to go see it. Yeah, it would be really fun. Okay, so any questions so far? Okay, let's go ahead and let's have our snack break now before we take our quiz. So grab your snacks, enjoy your snack time. Okay, so it is time for the quiz. So please take out a notebook and a pencil and write your name and number 1 through 10. And then I'm going to ask you the questions and then we'll go over the answers. So number 1 is the only way to see Mars with a telescope. Number 2, what is the length of a year on Mars? How many Earth days? Number 3, how many minutes longer is a day on Mars compared day on Earth? Number 4, if you weighed 150 pounds on Earth, how much would you weigh on Mars? I'll give you a clue. It's about 0.3%. Number 5, what is the name of the largest volcano in our solar system? Number 6, what are the names of the 2 Martian moons? Number 7, which Martian moon is larger? Number 8, what was the name of the first U.S. spacecraft to visit Mars? Number 9, what was the name of the first ever robotic rover to reach the surface of Mars? And number 10, in what year did the Spirit and Opportunity land on Mars? Okay, so I'm going to go over the answers with you, so please check over your answers, and then we'll turn them in and I will grade them. So number 1, is the only way to see Mars with a telescope? You should have said no, you can actually see Mars with just your eyes. Number 2, what is the length of a year on Mars? It is 687 Earth days. Number 3, how many minutes longer is a day on Mars compared to a day on Earth? 37 minutes. Number 4, if you weighed 150 pounds on Earth, how much would you weigh on Mars? You would only weigh 56 pounds on Mars. Number 5, what is the name of the largest volcano in our solar system? It is Olympus Mons. Number 6, what are the names of the 2 Martian moons, Phobos and Deimos? Number 7, which Martian moon is larger? Phobos. Number 8, what was the name of the first U.S. spacecraft to visit Mars? Mariner 4. Number 9, what was the name of the first ever robotic rover to reach the surface of Mars? The Pathfinder. And number 10, in what year did the Spirit and Opportunity land on Mars? It was 2004. So go ahead and grade your quizzes. Write how many you got correct and then turn them in. And that is all we are learning about Mars today. Stay tuned for the next planet. And good night.